Fellow Ghanaians, today it gives me much pleasure to start this new series in a drive to put up a notch or two higher our quest for a better democracy. We all know that corruption is such a serious canker in our society, and as such, I deem it a very good point to start this series. It's instructive at this point to note at the trial of Socrates, a point he made to the jury. To paraphrase, Socrates told the jury that in the event that he was convicted and sentenced to death, the jury should take care of his sons. They should correct them if they were interested in material wealth instead of virtue. That is the point. Correct Socrates' sons if they were interested in material wealth instead of virtue. This passage, it's quite instructive for our march towards a better governance, especially in our quest to stem corruption in the bud. To give further perspective, just on the 17th of November 2023, the Catholic Bishops' Conference came out with a communique in which they complained vehemently about unbridled corruption. The Bishops' Conference made the point that we actually are in a state of uncontrolled corruption, institutionalized bribery and corruption. Of course, we all acknowledge that it didn't start today, and we'll soon go back a bit into history on that. On the 23rd of August 2023, Reverend Opuni Frimpong, former General Secretary of the Christian Council, made the same point. He said we're living at the mercy of politicians who are so drowned in so much bribery and corruption. Recently, Kennedy Japan also had his own bite. He famously said, and to paraphrase, that government officials of this MPP administration are stealing money and stashing same away abroad as if there is no tomorrow. Fellow Ghanaians, think about that. He says they are stashing money abroad as if there is no tomorrow. So with this brief introduction, you see why it's important for us to talk about asset declaration and corruption in Ghana. Now, you look into the Constitution and you see that amongst other things, the Constitution tries to put in place practical measures to curb corruption. And here I'm specifically interested in Article 286, Clauses 3 and 4. In actual fact, the whole of 286 is instructive, but I'm going straight for the jugular. 286, Clause 3 talks about the asset declaration law, the circumstances under which assets that have been declared by certain public officials will be made available. That is to say, in simple terms, on what occasions will the assets declared be disclosed? And that is the heart of the matter when it comes to the asset declaration law as an anti-corruption tool. Straight away, my point is that 286 Clause 3, that lists 3 instances where the assets declared can be disclosed, is woefully inadequate. Once again, to paraphrase, it says that when an officer is declared his assets, the only occasions on which those assets will be, that the declaration will be disclosed, will be 1, when a court of law asks for same to be disclosed, so meaning that there's a case in court, and then when everything has been argued, the judge makes an order for the assets of the person of interest to be disclosed to the court. 2, when a commission of inquiry has been set up and it needs the assets disclosed, that's a declaration disclosed. 3, when you have a case before Shraj and Shraj is investigating same, right? Now, this is woefully inadequate because we've said it so many times that in our past, assets of public officers used to be disclosed to the public. We all have the famous Gazette notifications or the Gazette publications where during the PNDC time, Chairman Rawlings, as he then was known, published his assets together with all of his appointees and even former appointees. I have here one of those publications. So you have Wednesday, 7th October 1992, Gazette number 40. And then you see names and details of certain persons, right? So you will see P.V. Obin, Commodore Steve Obimpe, etc., etc. All of them publish their assets. So here you have it. If you went to the Assembly Press today, you could purchase a copy. So the point is that if in 1992 we could publish the assets, declare the assets, and also have them published for all citizenry to get copies, why don't we do so in our next law on asset declaration? When I say our next law, it is public knowledge that the asset declaration law, that's the Act 550, and its longer name is Public Office Holders, into brackets, Declaration of Assets and Disqualification Act 1998. Good. So this Act 550 is under review thanks to the IMF. You know, President Kufuor had been running away from it. And when I say running away from it, it's public knowledge that Occupy Ghana wrote to the presidency, and at a point they said they were no longer working on that law. So meaning that efforts to review that law had come to a standstill. But thanks to the IMF program we had to, subscribe to, it's back on the table because it's been made an IMF conditionality. Now, having been made an IMF conditionality, it is the case that, yes, the government is working on a draft. Prior to 2022, there had been previous drafts, and those were the ones I said it got to a point the president said they were no longer interested in the asset declaration law. Good, but now they are back to it. And so we are all waiting with bated breath, but we should be making an input, making a serious input, because so far the indications we are getting in the public don't seem to bode well for a good, world-class asset declaration law that the president is promising us. Now, at the 2023 Bar Conference, the president addressed the gathering in Cape Coast and promised that his government was going to deliver a new asset declaration law along the lines of Kenya and the USA. That is what the president said. Now, before I come into Kenya and USA, fast forward, in the 2024 budget, Ken Ofori-Atta, in delivering the president's budget, pursuant to Article 179 of the Constitution, and also the Public Financial Management Act, indicated in paragraph 184 that the government was in the process of presenting a bill to Parliament on the new asset declaration law. Then, Minister Ofori-Atta mentioned that there would be provision on verification of the assets that are declared. Now, yes, when Ofori-Atta mentions verification of assets declared, it's one step forward. Yes, one step forward, because currently under the law, there's no express provision for verification once the officers involved, as ministers and other senior public officers, publish or declare their assets. But it's the case that even on the ground, practically, the Auditor General has started verifying the assets, at least in a way, to a certain extent, as we're told by Mr. Domlevo, that when the assets, when he was in office, says that when a declaration is made, they open and read through. I'm not saying that's state-of-the-art verification, but I'm saying that some efforts have been made. But the point is that verification of the assets is not the ultimate. The ultimate in the new law will be publication after the declaration. Publication on the internet. I say on the internet because it's already clear to us that considering the size of Ghana now, the size of the public service, right now over 650,000 employees, you look at the ministers, etc. Yes, it makes sense that the publication can be done online, but it must be made. So the point is that so far, we are not hearing that publication of the assets, it's in the bill. And that is where our worry should be as fellow Ghanaians, because you remember President Akufo-Addo exhorted us to rise up as citizens and not be spectators. So it's important, it's very imperative that at this stage, we make an input that we want to see publication of the assets that have been declared. Because with our publication, as Samson Ladia put it, the bill is not worth its name. Yeah, so that is the extent to which publication is important. Because once publication is done, somebody can sit in Boku, look up the list and all the assets declared, then you can check that, okay, a minister who comes from Boku, okay, this assets is declared. Do they match what that person is seeing on the ground? Perhaps there's a certain house he's been frequenting, perhaps his relatives live in, and the whole community know as his house, yet it's not in the online declaration. With this, the man in Boku can lodge a complaint. Or somebody in Fanchiniko sits and sees that one of their citizens, who is a minister, has declared assets but has left out a certain famous property in the town. He too will have an opportunity to lodge a complaint. So you see that publication will do us a lot of good. And not just a lot of good, actually to bring us at par with certain countries we've prided ourselves as being better than. Foremost amongst this is Liberia. Can you imagine? Central African Republic. As for South Africa, we all know, well, they are ahead of us. So why would Liberia today allow publication of their assets, and we who were doing it in 1992 would throw ours away? It's common knowledge that we usually extol Sankofa. So in this instance, let's do Sankofa. Right. Now, quite apart from the publication, I think one other instructive point we should be looking at is even for officers. That's before a person enters public office. Of course, by all means, there are other provisions that are instructive, but as I mentioned, I'm looking at the heartbeat, the front and center of the bill. If you look across civil society, you talk to Mary Nana Addo of GII, you talk to Kojo Asante of CDD, H. Kwesi Prempeh, A. Sankuma. I mean, you talk to people in civil society and everybody is in favor of publication. So that is why I'm placing so much emphasis on publication. The other improvements, yes, they are welcome, but no matter the other provisions, if publication doesn't make it, then forget it. The bill is not worth its name. Now, let's go back a bit into history and see if we can make some further improvements to this bill. I'm most interested in SMCD 216. Now, SMCD 216 was made during a military regime, and it has a list of 105 citizens who were disqualified because they could not account for the assets they had acquired whilst in public office. Okay, so SMCD 216. And when we say SMCD, that's Supreme Military Council Decree. Supreme Military Council Decree. The second one was led by General Ekufu. Yes. So you find Lieutenant General F.W.K. Ekufu. He signed it on the 30th day of December 1978. This was in preparation for the subsequent elections. So now, look, 105 citizens. This is what they did. It meant that if you couldn't justify your assets, you would not be allowed to hold public office, and you would not be able to contest in public elections. Let me mention some of the notable people who were disqualified. Of course, subsequently they were able to come back, but not in the 1979 elections, because some of them went to court and lost. Notable among them was G.H. Mensah. Look, number one, you have Reginald Reynolds Amponsa. Number two, Chief S.D. Dombo, and so on and so forth. So if you go in, you find G.H. Mensah and other popular politicians. So this is it. This was a law that disqualified them. And as I said, J.H. Mensah and co. went to court. They lost, and so they were disqualified in the 1979 elections, and so on and so forth, right? So what I'm talking about is that, is it also a time for us to do Sankofa in the lines of this SMCD 216, so that now that we all accept that so many people have amassed wealth illegally, we should set up a commission, we should make a law and set up a commission along the lines of the SMCD 216, so that those who want to contest elections would then go before that commission and justify their assets. Because if at that time we could get 105, who knows? We may well get even more today. And so through this, we'll be sanitizing the system. The point is that we may well get a higher number than the 105 who are captured by this SMCD 216. And in that manner, we would be moving our democracy forward. Because, once again, let's go back to Socrates. He has dire consequences for us if we are not willing to fight corruption in our democracy. In the Republic, Socrates makes the point that if we don't fight corruption, what we are going to get is anarchy and then a dissolution of our democracy. Yes. So, and when we talk about Socrates, maybe for the record, let's repeat, Socrates is reputed as the best philosopher ever. And so you would find that a lot of his writings have influenced the Western democracies. Yes, you read the literature, you're told about how the writings of Socrates have influenced Western democracies. So anytime we cite Socrates, we cite with pride, because for a man who has contributed so much to Western democracies, and we have copied large parts of our constitution from these Western countries, it means that we are also beneficiaries of the ideas of Socrates. And even apart from democracy, you even go into church, they'll tell you that the writings of Socrates and the Platonic writings, Socrates never wrote himself. It was Plato who wrote what Socrates said. So they'll tell you that these Platonic writings have also largely influenced even the church. So you're told about the writings of St. Augustine. And if you're a Catholic, even if you're not a Catholic, you read about St. Augustine. You'll be told how St. Augustine helped to keep the church afloat after the Dark Ages. And Augustine was influenced a lot by the Platonic writings, that's the writings of Plato, etc. So when we talk about Socrates, he's no mean person, right? A man of very great achievement. So you see Socrates warning us that if you don't fight corruption and bribery in a democracy, very soon you will have anarchy. And that's not difficult to imagine, because people who feel hard done by may want to take a revenge, because they sit and they see people, that's politicians, who hardly had vehicles. Some who rode only bicycles came into office and now are in V8s. Those who were in mini cars, Mini Coopers, etc. Today they are in a string of V8s, etc. So you see that this is a clarion call that we fail to fight corruption at our own peril. So it means more or less this is an existential threat. Because for the Catholic Church, once again, to tell us that, look, bribery and corruption have been institutionalized, that we have uncontrolled corruption, it tells you that, fellow Ghanaians, this is a time for us to sit up. We sit up or we perish. That is it for this week's podcast. Make a date with me next week in our quest for a better governance for Ghana. I am Martin Kpebu.